everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Selena, and today I'm going to be giving you all my labor and delivery story. Finally got all my notes together about what happened that day, so I'm super excited to share it with you all. Now, before I get started, I'd like to ask everyone to please hit that subscribe button. It would just make me so happy so I can continue making videos that you guys all want to see. So I gave birth on July 2nd of 2020, and it was not exactly how I expected. So I'm gonna go all the way back to July 1st when I went into labor. So on July 1st, I was 39 weeks pregnant, and to be honest with you, I was pretty tired of being pregnant just because of COVID. We were locked in our apartment for most of the end of my pregnancy. There wasn't much to do. And I just wanted my baby girl to arrive, and since I was 39 weeks pregnant, I started to do some labor-inducing things to help kickstart my labor. So we decided to go to the mall and take a really long walk. So we went to the biggest mall where I live, and we literally walked around for an hour and a half. And when I got home, I was exhausted and I took a nap, and when I woke up, I started to feel contractions about 5 p.m. On July 1st, and they were very mild contractions, and they were about 10 minutes apart. So I started tracking them, and then about at 10 p.m. they went all the way to 4 minutes apart. So my doctor said between 3 to 5 minutes apart, I should go into the hospital. So we packed up all our stuff and we headed to the hospital. And once we got there, they checked me out and they saw that I was only 2 centimeters dilated. So the pain was pretty mild, just like mild period cramps. Like I was able to walk, talk, everything was totally fine. So they told me that I could go home and just my labor would continue there since I didn't need any medication, but to come back to the hospital, obviously, if the pain was unbearable, and then also if my water broke. So we went back home, and I decided to try to get some sleep to see, just because I knew the next day was going to be a hectic and tiring day, obviously. So I was able to fall asleep through the contractions, and I woke up at 4 a.m. to my water breaking, which was super painful. I always wondered what it would feel like for my water to break, and obviously it's kind of what everyone says. There's a gush of water that comes out, and it was pretty painful. Definitely like really strong period cramps. So I called the hospital, let them know that I was on the way. And so we went around 4 a.m. and we got there around 4:20 a.m. So at this point, it was starting to get pretty painful to the point that I was tearing up. So I was starting to cry whenever I had a contraction. I was also pretty nervous and scared because this is my first time and I didn't know what to expect. So I was overwhelmed with all these emotions once my water broke. Also, I'd like to mention that I was strep B positive, and I had to hurry to the hospital as I needed to be on antibiotics during my labor and delivery. So basically, when you're around 32 weeks pregnant, they do test you if you are strep B positive, which means that I have a certain bacteria in my body that is dangerous to the baby when you are in labor and delivery. So when you're delivering the baby, you could pass that infection onto your baby, which is why I needed to be on antibiotics right when my water broke to when I gave birth. So I hurried to the hospital just so I can get an IV put into me, and that was the first issue that I encountered during my delivery. Was the nurse could not put my needle into my arm. It was so painful, and I was like, it's super stressed out. They had to get 3 different nurses. They poked me, I think, more than 10 times trying to get the needle in. I think it was because I was like super cold. You couldn't see my veins at all, just because I was so stressed out. So obviously after that, I was just hanging out, I was only 2 centimeters dilated at that point. So just waiting until I hit 10 centimeters. So a couple hours passed after that, and the contractions were getting stronger. So they did check me again. And then when they checked me, the nurse said I was only 3 centimeters dilated. And I was like, are you kidding? only 1 centimeter more that I got dilated in these couple hours. So when they checked me and I was only 3 centimeters dilated, they noticed that I had some, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, meconium, which means that the baby actually pooped in my belly. And I didn't even know what that was. I never even heard about that, researching about labor and delivery, but obviously the baby is able to poop in your belly during labor, but it can cause infection. So at that point, they want the baby to come out faster because they don't want the baby to get an infection from the poop in my belly. So they were hoping that my labor would move along faster, but after a little bit, they noticed we weren't making any progress. Like, I was still at 3 centimeters and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why am I not getting more dilated? And so they decided to give me some Pitocin to speed up my labor because they were worried about infection. So once they gave me that Pitocin, oh my God, labor just flew by so quick. My contractions were getting so intense, super fast. It was just like the worst period cramps I've ever had. It was so hard for me to even stand up, and I didn't know what to do just because I couldn't stand up. I was literally laying in the bed on the side rails, just clinging to the side of the bed. My contractions were getting pretty intense, so 30 to 45 seconds at this point. No nurses or doctors checked how dilated I was, but I was starting to really start crying and just making noises because of the pain was so intense. So they decided to move me to a delivery room at that point. So it's now 1 p.m. on July 2nd, 2020. So I got in there about 4:20 in the morning, and now it's about 1 p.m. And I was moved to the delivery room where they checked me again, since I was saying that my contractions were starting to get unbearable. And then lo and behold, I was 10 centimeters dilated. So right away they asked me to start pushing. And I'm just thinking, like, why didn't you check me a little bit earlier? Because then they would have known I was close to getting 10 centimeters and they could have let me know, but nobody checked on me. So I'm not sure what happened there. But so I was at 10 centimeters, so I was cleared to push. I started pushing and I probably pushed through 3 contractions, so 3 separate times. And then the doctor told me to stop pushing, and she checked me, and then she saw that the baby's head somehow during the last time they checked me turned in the wrong direction. So I guess they want the baby's head to face down or even down a little bit to the side, but my baby's head was looking up and to the side, which she told me that it was not an ideal time to push because the tearing, just the way the baby's head was, would just be even worse than it would be coming the way that they wanted the baby to come out. So the tearing would just be way worse, and it would be a longer recovery for me. It would be more stitches, and they didn't want that to happen. So they said that they wanted to try to turn the baby's head before I started pushing. And I want to remind you guys all that I didn't want an epidural yet. I wasn't opposed to having an epidural, but I wanted to do it as natural as possible. And then if I couldn't stand it anymore, then I would opt to get an epidural. So I was pushing, and actually when you push during when you're 10 centimeters and you start pushing, it actually feels good to push. The pain actually subsides once you start pushing. So I wanted to. I kept saying, I feel like I need to push. The baby's head was where it needed to be, and I just felt in my body I needed to push, but they wouldn't let me. So it was super hard for me to withstand the pain to not push, because it just felt better when I was pushing. Every 30 seconds I was still getting contractions, and the doctor put her hand up in me and tried to turn the baby's head with her hand, and she just couldn't do it. The baby was being stubborn. She was not moving. So she said the only other thing we can do is put my legs up in different positions to try to get the baby to move. They started to give me those big exercise balls. They put it under my legs in different positions so to see if that would help the baby move. And at this point, it was around 2 p.m. And she said, and it was just really hard for me to hold in those positions. So they wanted me to hold that position for like 20 minutes and then switch it. And I said, there's no way I can do that. I could barely stand still for a minute because of every 30 seconds I would get a contraction and I would not be able to sit still like that into the position they wanted me to be in. I told them I need an epidural. I started yelling, please get me an epidural. Like, I can't do this anymore. And so the lady said, okay, we'll bring in an epidural, but you're already 10 centimeters dilated, so it's going to be extremely iffy if the epidural is going to work or not. So I have a really bad phobia of needles, so that's mostly why I didn't want the epidural in the first place. It was hard enough for me to get the IV, and then the needle, I just didn't look. I was going crazy. I was screaming. My husband said he didn't even know who I was at that point. I was crying. Every 30 seconds, I was just in so much pain. And then they put the epidural in, and then I waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and 30 minutes, and I was screaming, it's not working, the epidural's not working. And then finally, the doctor came in again and said, okay, it's not working, the epidural must have failed because you're too far along, like you're already 10 centimeters. We usually put it in a little bit earlier. So he's like, but we'll try to put a top up on it and hopefully that will minimize some of your pain. So they put in some more into my back. And then finally, after 10 minutes, half my body was numb. So pretty much like the right side of my body, my right leg, and then the right side of my stomach was numb, but the left side of my stomach did not work. So I could still feel the contraction on that side of my body, but at least half the pain was gone. So I was fine with that because I could withstand half the pain. It was a lot easier for me. It still hurt, obviously, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't sit still in order for the baby's head to move. It was now like 3:30ish or almost 4, something like that. And then I started pushing. At this point, they checked me again and they said, okay, the baby's head finally moved on her own. So now I'm able to start pushing. So I was pushing for about 2.5 to 3 hours. And then finally my daughter came at 6:01 p.m. on July 2nd, 2020, and she was 6 pounds and 14 ounces. So after my daughter was born, I had a grade 1 tear and a grade 2 tear. So one of my stitches was about 3 or less stitches, and then the other tear was about 8 or so stitches. So it was a lot less than I needed. The doctor said if we started pushing when the baby's head was in the wrong direction, because then I would have had way more tearing and it would have been way worse to stitch up. So I'm definitely glad that the doctor didn't want me to push when I felt like I needed to, just because then the recovery time for me was a lot less. Obviously it took about a couple weeks, but after about a week I didn't really feel the stitches anymore, so I was pretty happy with that. And we actually didn't leave the hospital for about 5 days since my daughter had jaundice, which is like a yellowing in the skin. It's a 1 in 4 chance that it would happen. And it happened to her, unfortunately, and she had to have 5 days of light therapy in the hospital. I'm glad to report that she is completely healthy now, and she's 7 months and she is doing great. So that is my labor and delivery story. Definitely not what I expected, and I wanted to film this video mostly because if you're a new mom giving birth for the first time, I know a lot of people say, oh, you need to have a birth plan so you know exactly what you want to do, but I just want to throw that out there that like you can't really prepare to give birth because it's just so different for everybody, especially if it's your first time. Obviously you have like ideas of what you want, if you want to do it naturally or if you want to epidural right away. And those are the things that you can plan for. But honestly, like, I couldn't plan really to give a natural birth because I didn't expect like all these things to happen during my delivery. So you just have to roll with the punches and everything will be okay. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you have any questions, please make sure to leave it in the comments, and I'll see you guys all in my next video. Thanks, bye.